Hello and welcome. My name is Bhuvan Unhelkar, your tutor, and in this particular lecture, we're going to discuss quality assurance and testing function associated with business analysis. Occasionally, a question is asked: does a BA, a business analyst, need to do anything with testing? And the answer obviously is yes. Is the business analyst a tester himself or herself? Probably no, but there is a fair amount of overlap between someone who is a specialist tester and someone like you and me who is doing business analysis work. So we do need to understand the testing function. And in this particular lecture, that's what we will try and do. A very simple reason why we should be involved in testing is because we are the ones who specify what is required. If you take any other domain, construction domain, you specify the house and you have the right to say whether the house has come up to your specifications or not. Same is true with all other domains. So when it comes to business analysis work, especially when it is related to systems, IT systems, we do have a right and a responsibility to get involved in whatever is that quality function within the organization. We specify requirements, we want to make sure that whatever is the solution, and more often than not in today's world where no business process really runs without an underlying IT component or two or many. We need to validate that that particular system or that solution is according to what the problem was. So, with that background, let us try and understand how the quality function works and where and how we fit in. Now, I have described to you uh, quality as in three different levels, three different parts. There is the overall administrative function, which I call quality management. That is your strategic view of quality, which does include testing but is not just testing. So, how to organize the quality function? What are the standards? What are the processes that we need? Who are the resources within our quality function? Uh, what kind of hardware, test environment, test bed? What will be the approach to testing? What will be the approach to quality assurance? All that is involved in quality management. So, a business analyst is perhaps not directly involved in the administrative or the management function, but is still very much providing input to a quality manager in an organization. The next function, which is a little less strategic, if you like, is quality assurance. And the way I differentiate between quality assurance and quality control, which is the tactical aspect of quality, is that quality assurance deals with prevention of errors, whereas quality control deals with detection of errors. So, business analysts are involved in both, in the prevention of errors through quality processes, through various models that we create, the requirements models, participate in the design, interact with the enterprise architects, ensure that communication is much more effective and clearer. Standards like ISO standards or process maturity standards are embedded within the organizational processes. That's all assuring quality. And then we get involved in the quality control or testing. And there, the primary area that we get involved with is acceptance or user acceptance testing. So we consider the system, the solution, more like a black box. And remember those use cases that we have written, the activity graphs or the BPM diagrams or the user stories. We test against those requirements. That is participating in quality control or testing with an intention of finding any errors that might be there. Of course, quality function for a business analyst at that higher level of abstraction, higher level of work, which is when we are specifying the needs, we are exploring the capabilities, can become much more abstract, can become more fuzzy. But we still have a responsibility to say whether a particular decision which results in one or more projects has actually fulfilled the need of the business, and those higher level needs that we explore through mind maps or through Ishikawa diagrams or do a SWOT analysis to find out where exactly the organization is, the project is, the situation is. We have to trace the solution back to whether those particular needs expressed through those techniques have been satisfied or not. And such work by a business analyst can do two things. First, of course, by tracing the solution right up to the needs of business and its capabilities, we come to know whether the solution has been successful or not. On the other hand, we also learn lessons by doing this post project review that can feed into the next exercise that we would do. So that's the overall background for the quality assurance function that a business analyst would do. And when it comes to that function, I have also described in the seminar the various areas of work like requirements modeling, requirements management, business rules. If you remember, we need to verify and validate whether the business rules have been satisfied or have been faithfully implemented in the system or not. We deal with project management in terms of scheduling of the test, in terms of making provision for regression test, in terms of figuring out the risks associated with testing, especially when testing is going wrong, or I should say right, because we are finding many bugs. Configuration and change management associated with business analysis, verification and validation, software development, and the stock standard testing that a developer might do can benefit by input from a business analyst, um, particularly in terms of the range of data that should be tested and the intensity of testing, which also reminds me of the non-functional requirements that we had discussed earlier in week 6. Business analysts are in an excellent position to help in non-functional requirement testing, not because they are expected to be technical about it, but because they, which is you and me, are specifying the non-functional requirements of the organization. And then, of course, production related issues, deployment related issues, training related issues. Whenever we are verifying and validating these issues, we are playing the role of a business analyst relating to a tester, and whole range of testing with it. In terms of designing the tests, again, it is very important that we come up with a strategy of how testing is to be done. If you remember, we had created packages or subsystems, or broken down the requirements into chunks of lower level next tier requirements. Testing can be organized in such a way that we schedule the tests for the earlier packages on which the later packages might depend. Now again, while this is a specialist testing function, we as business analysts can inform the test manager or the test designer that, for example, in a typical banking application, customer package should be tested first, and accounting package should be tested next, and tax calculation package should be tested much later. Because first we need a customer, then we need account that are opened by the customer, and then we calculate tax or interest rate for those accounts. So the sequencing of the packages and their dependencies are known to us as business analysts, and therefore we are in an excellent position to give advice to the test managers and to the test designers. And for each package, each module, we have a test design which describes the preconditions for testing, which describes the requirement for creation of test environment, test beds, which is a suite of test data, both for functional and non-functional testing. And again, as BAs, we can inform the test team that we are going to need 1 million dummy records to test out the performance, or 10 million records to test out the volume requirements for the system. And both performance and volume, as you know, are non-functional requirements. So that's how we continue to give input into the formulation of test designs and overall test strategy. When it comes to the base test case, as I had mentioned to you earlier when we were discussing use cases, that a well formulated use case is almost 80% of your test case. So this is where you are testing functional requirements. use cases or user stories or any other mechanism that you have used to write your requirements is your core mechanism to start writing your test cases. And there are many times in practice when I write fairly detailed use cases and simply append my test data to those use cases, and that becomes my test case. So I don't even have to write a separate test case so long as I'm able to embed test data in the use case, because that way I'm testing each step within the use case. Of course, for non-functional requirements, for interface requirements, we do require a separate approach because we don't have use cases for non-functional requirements. Now, that brings us to the topic of test data. And again, we need to be very clever in advising the testers what kind of data and how to create that data or how to source that data. And there's a lot of philosophy behind the right kind of data and the right amount of data. And although we don't have time or the scope to go deep into testing, there are standards like the ISTQB and of course the ISO 9000 series of standards, and then there are also standards specifically for testing that all describe what you should have in terms of test design, test plan, test cases, test results collation, and test data. So one of the known very popular philosophy of sourcing test data is actually a statistical approach. As you probably know, when nowadays we do market surveys, political parties do their own spot polling, we do many such statistical approaches or surveys based on statistical approaches. So if we need to survey the agreement or disagreement on a particular topic from say 22 million people that are there in Australia, the phone companies will go about that is the phone company that has been asked. So the surveying company which is going to use the phone calls are going to select data, select a sample of the population, and that's an analytical skill. They will do the demographics and then they will select the right samples. And so if they make 10 phone calls um, based on the samples, they will have surveyed 10,000 people. So here in the seminar I have shown you the two popular techniques: equivalence, partitioning, and boundary values for test data. So you find that given a set of 1 million accounts, you don't want to test all 1 million accounts. So you divide them in equal partitions, equal uniform partitions. All accounts that have been opened um, in the last 1 month, all accounts that are over 10 years old. You create chunks of data like this, and then you select uh, more or less from the center of this chunk of data, and so you come up with a less selective number of data for testing. And as BAs you can sit together with the testers to describe what you mean by uh, equivalence partitions from a business viewpoint. So your input is continuously from the business viewpoint rather than from the nitty gritty of actual testing. And then once you have created equivalence partitioning, you then also look at boundary values, which are the values at the edge of each partition. So typically an account that is opened on 29th of February 2012, which is a leap year, that's a boundary value. 31st of December for an account opening date is a boundary value, and so is 1st of January. So you can take this understanding and apply it to various areas where you have to create test data. But to summarize the requirement of test data, you must always have a set of valid data and a set of invalid data. A set of data that will go through as pass, and a set of data that will be rejected by the system as pass. So remember, you can apply various techniques, and you may not get to apply the detailed equivalence partitioning and boundary values when you are doing business analysis work, but certainly you have a responsibility to provide input to the testers in terms of how to create test data. And this test data can be embedded in your use cases or on the back of your user stories and can be tested out. Now, there are some practical issues related to testing, such as regression testing. As business analyst, you need to make a call. If too many tests within a particular module are failing, you really need to decide whether the entire module needs retesting, or the entire module really needs to be sent back for development, together with the project manager, together with the enterprise architect, together with the test manager. You as business analyst, as a senior role within the project, and in fact even before the project, have a opportunity to give out that kind of information, and you should. Finally, there is some thought also on the rapidly increasing importance of user experience. So when we are testing, we are not simply testing whether a system is working correctly or not. We are testing so many other areas like the non-functional requirements, scalability and performance, security, operating system, volume of data, and we can also apply our testing, which could be a checklist based testing for user experience. So go back to our lesson on user experience and usability, and see if you can pick some of those usability criteria, such as learnability or efficiency of keystrokes, or memorability of the system, or errors, or user satisfaction through the process of clicking a few keystrokes, and so on. And you can also help the testers validate and verify the positioning of the fields, the colors of the fields, and the ability of the system to grow with the increasing experience of the user. So all these are usability related tests, and business analysts are definitely interested in whether the solution that has been provided is is meeting the requirements, is meeting the usability criteria, or not. So that's a fairly detailed, in my opinion, a description of what we would be doing as a business analyst. And excuse me for this, but allow me to be as relaxed as I can be. um, so to summarize, we as business analysts have a lot of input to give into testing. Testing is only one small part of an overall quality function in the organization, which includes quality management and quality assurance. If we have written good use cases or user stories, and we have drawn activity graphs and BPM diagrams, we are in an excellent position to add test data to it and enable acceptance testing. When it comes to test data, remember, there are various techniques to create the data, but there should be a set of valid data and a set of invalid data. And finally, we should be testing functional, non-functional interface, uh, which is related to user interface, all these three kind of testing. We are doing acceptance testing, so we are not really doing technical test, uh, but still playing a very very important role. And then also a little bit of thoughts on regression testing, that is going back and testing the entire system again because some parts of the system are failing. So I hope this has been of value to you. um, Certainly having these chats and expressing my thoughts on various topics related to business analysis is of immense value to me. So I hope you are enjoying this, and keep up your motivation, and remember, our assignments are progressing as well, and I hope you are doing well in that. So until next time, thank you and bye bye.